Hello, everyone. I am Mustard, human employee, still not unionized. Try my best to get some sort of compensation, but that's for another time. I have the pleasure of being joined with
Zaq Baker.
Zaq Baker. Thanks for being here. How are you doing today?
I'm great. I'm really good. Thank you for having me.
Of course. Welcome to Music Self. So, um, with how this is going, we could either start off with, talk about your recent stuff, which would be Solar Baby, or would you want to go from the beginning and talk about like your early beginnings leading up to Solar Baby?
I think Solar Baby would actually be a pretty fun place to start.
Okay.
I remember that's why I reached out to you at first. I mean, first of all, because I want to say it was Tommy actually that had enjoyed a really thoughtful review from you, and Tommy worked all over Solar Baby. So that's what made me think of actually having a discussion together. So that might be a great place to start. Plus, it's brand new.
Yeah, that works. All right. Yeah. So Tommy is wonderful. I actually have the toilet rats
The cassette.
little cassette right here
Those have been
for.
really
Hmm?
popular. It's kind of fun to watch the cassette really take off, like the label that you worked with to get that happening.
Yeah. So Tommy worked on Solar Baby with you. Mustard and I had a question about the album name Solar Baby. Um, is Solar Baby like a product of potential like solar panels? Like, are they really big into like energy, or where did the name come from?
Yeah, actually, I wonder if you would know. So we worked on the album for like fits and starts most of a year before he even
Mhm.
suggested the title. I
Mhm.
wanted to just call the album Zach and Tommy Make a New Wave record, but he's too humble and he was like, I don't want to do it. And then he was like, have you ever heard of this movie Solar Babies? And I was like, no, I haven't. It's like an 80s children's movie. Are you familiar with this at all? I don't want to like over explain it to you.
No, no, no. I am not familiar with it.
I don't know if Mustard is either, you know.
Mustard. I mean, Mustard's been around for a while. There's a chance that they've been near like the VHS tape of it, but I don't think Mustard's seen it now.
So it's like right in the middle of the 80s, and so I mean I watched it after we chose that as the album title because I figured that'd probably be a good thing to do. And it's in, I can't remember if it's Earth or another planet, but everybody lives in this world where not only is it kind of like a every person for themselves dystopia, but also the whole planet is like dehydrated. So they're living, I
Oh.
mean, it kind of looks like Tatooine, I think is what they sort of modeled it after. And also everyone is on roller skates all the time. So there's kids that just like skate around. There's sort of like teenagers that are enlisted by whatever like enemy government. Teenagers are sort of like the we're going to safeguard resources like water, things like that. And then for some reason, like I say, they're all rollerblading constantly. And then the youngest kid, who's kind of the main character, stumbles onto a crystal ball named Bodai that communicates to him non-verbally. Um, I want to say the name of the movie is Solar Babies, and I also think that's the name of like the little crew of kids are called like the Solar Babies.
Oh, cool.
So
Okay.
basically, it's a cult kids '80s movie, and it's so over the top '80s that Tommy was like, "We should name the '80s record after that movie," because he just liked it when he was a kid. So we said, "Screw it."
Oh,
Yeah,
that's
I think
awesome.
it's on HBO. I think either I rented it for free or it was one of those like $2 rentals. So if you ever want to watch a very like kind of culty kids movie, I recommend it.
Mustard and I will check that out. That sounds like something right up our alley. So Tommy came up with the name Solar Baby. When you guys were working together, did you already know, like, did you already have in your mind that you wanted it to be an 80s record, or did it just kind of like come into that?
Yeah, from the start, it was like a let's choose this style and like run down
Mm-hmm.
that road together. So, um, he knows my music, which is very like grand piano, pop punk,
Mm-hmm.
musical theater. Like it's very like this is the style. It's a little like Reliant K or something like that. Like confluence of style that's very piano driven. And he was like, "Well, you
Mm-hmm.
always post on Instagram about how much you love like Tears for Fears, Joy Division,
Mm-hmm.
Cure, Pat Benatar, like all these distinctly '80s, late '70s groups of this like Talking Heads is like an obsession." So he was like,
Mm-hmm.
"Why don't you like we should just make a record that's like that because that would just be fun."
Yeah.
And I said, "Absolutely." So we both were like, "No piano, just synthesizers." So I played all the keyboards. I wrote all the music and lyrics, and like the chord changes, and obviously I did the vocals, and then Tommy played everything else. So he played guitar, bass guitar,
Oh,
drums, did a bunch of drum sampling, engineered everything, definitely made a few like directorial decisions and came up with like the guitar parts and the bass parts. But yeah, from the start it was like we should make an 80s album because we both just love like kind of high energy but sort of dark, like a little bit goth style of things, the new wave.
Oh, that's so cool. And the 80s, it seems like with every year, previous generations, previous decades become popular again, like with Stranger Things, like the 80s, it's back. Was that on like the back of your guys' minds too, with like the 80s popularity taking off
Yeah,
some more?
I think for the two of us, it was more just like a fondness for the style. But I definitely agree with you because I remember the first two seasons of Stranger Things, like totally invigorating that again. And then, I'm trying to think. We would have actually been making the record when is it the third or the fourth season where Kate Bush like exploded again in popularity because of Running Up That Hill?
Oh, fourth season. Yeah, fourth season.
So we came up with the album idea before that. But yeah, I mean, I love that nostalgia, like always getting repurposed. I think it's so fun because like I wear my Talking Heads shirt places, and certain people are like, "Oh my god, like I just got into them, like true stories, right?" And it's like, "Yep." So,
Oh, that's awesome.
I think for the two of us, it was more like this is a soft spot, and like I play keyboards, so doing that kind of translation was honestly pretty fun.
No, that's awesome. And I was today at my day job. I was listening to your earlier stuff as well, which we'll talk about. And the piano, like you said, you primarily play piano, and do musical theater, and stuff like that. But yeah, the '80s influences since like it's all so good. This is a bit off topic, but on topic. But have either of you seen Kung Fury? Kung Fury, I think that's what it's called. It was like a YouTube film. It was like an 80s inspired like kung fu flick that was just so over the top. Highly recommend. I think it's called Kung Fury. It's really good. It's really good.
Is it kind of like indie then? Like someone made it and then did kind of like a love letter to the 80s thing and then it's like freely available?
Yeah. Yeah, it's one of those type of films.
Probably watch it tomorrow. If I get a recommendation, I try to just like move on it quickly because people are like, "Oh, I'll totally listen to that album," and it's like if they don't do it the next day, it's like,
you forget about it.
Cool.
So it's I think it would be up both of your guys' sense of humor just from the brief conversation that we've had already. But going off of what you were saying earlier with the 80s, did you end up throwing like an 80s like release party for it? Did you have like a big celebration for the album?
Yes, we did actually. And once again, that was Tommy's orchestration because I really wanted, I love release parties. I think I put out 3 different records during COVID. So also like most people, I was robbed of that opportunity for like a year and a half. So because the album was so stylized, though, I wanted to just have a party instead of performing it and just be like, I literally made a playlist that was like 18 hours long. It was like the Go-Go's and the Cars and like all of that good stuff. And I was like, I'd rather just mill around listening to this stuff, hang out, and demand that everyone wear brightly colored clothing. And like, if they want to do stuff with their hair to make it look 80s and like, and I have it be more social hour. And also just like once in a while, like I have to plan performances a lot, which like I love doing. But I also thought it would be fun to release an album and then not do like traditional. So anyway, it was a party. I bought a highlighter colored jacket that's like all pink and lime green for like $10 thrifting.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, everybody like most people like dressed up, which was really fun. And then Tommy, I can't even speak to the technology, but he rigged like a bunch of radios together to play my playlist from. So within the coffee house, we were broadcasting the music that I had put together for the release. So it was like just goofy enough, but it was also people like leaned into it. And obviously we listened to the album at the party.
Oh, that sounds like that sounds like so much fun.
It was good to do it like different. I think in a perfect world, I probably would play a show, but it was just kind of like we made this thing and we went really way out of our way to kind of like produce it in a certain way. So wouldn't it be fun to just like
Yeah,
do it, you know?
yeah, like it elevates the music even more and the experience of listening to it, which is really cool. And you've talked about planning performances on your Instagram a lot. We see that you're always, you're at various plays and musicals. Do you have like a background in musical theater?
Nope. This is like a whole conversation we could have because since my songwriting career started in 2017, like every show I would play, people would like come up to me and be like, it's so great seeing someone that grew up doing musical theater that's like still kind of doing it with your songwriting. And I would have to kind of be like afraid they would ask me like specific questions, and I'd be like, I honestly don't know more than like a small handful of like really famous shows, like any reference points. I just grew up with
Yeah.
like Billy Joel and like Ben Folds and all these like kind of theater type of piano players. Sarah Bareilles, obviously, but so only this fall did I start being like, I want to learn every single thing that that world has to offer. So like for the last 6 months, it's just like every day I just try to like inhale as much like cast recordings as I can. I mean, the great thing about
That's
nowadays, like part of why I was intimidated was I was like, I'm not going to go to New York and see like new shows whenever they exist or whatever. So I'll just be the guy who never learns about this stuff. And of course, now it's like everything's, you can just find great film versions everywhere.
That's true, but that's okay. But yeah, no, the musical theater world is really it's so big. Before I became a human intern for Mustard, I taught theater for a little bit. I minored in theater, so
Really?
mhm. So it is a big. The scope of it is massive. So I completely understand you about being not wanting to be intimidated by everything.
Yeah. Well, and I'm just intimidated, I think, somewhat easily in general. So it was like I don't know about this and other people do, so I'm just gonna kind of keep doing my thing. But my reference
Yeah.
points have always been that like Broadway school of thought. You know, I mean, especially if you play piano, it's like, what if we did leading tones like literally all the time and like different dynamic things that I just kind of had an idea about from like growing up, literally just listening to piano rock sometimes. But yeah, I mean, my last 6 months have just been like living in that world as much as possible. And then, of course, living in the Twin Cities, there's also amazing shows going on all the time. So I'm kind of like, now I'm on all the email lists and I'm like, let's go see something because there's literally great theater all the time. You know, it's great.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm forgetting the popular theater from that area, but yeah, they always have stuff going on. I feel bad. I should know the theater name off the top of my head.
What
But
capacity were you teaching, like at a high school level or like college? Or
yeah. So I taught. So I taught high school. I had only started teaching. Maybe I was a sub for like 5 weeks, and then I got a call saying, "Hey, you want to come in for an interview for the theater position?" And I was like, "Oh, full-time teaching gig, yeah." But to be honest, when I minored in theater, I didn't really focus on the directing and all that stuff. I was more of like an improv behind the scenes type of theater kid where I'd much rather write a play for you or a dialogue for you rather than act. I don't consider myself the best actor, honestly. This whole Mustard thing, sorry, boss, I think is my best role that I've done. But yeah, I taught high school for a little bit, and I still try to keep in touch with my theater friends from college and stuff. But yeah, I was always more of a behind the scenes. If you had an idea, let me try to write you a play, let's write you something. But yeah, it was fun. I learned a lot. But yeah, I don't know if I want to go back into that. But I have a deep appreciation for it, definitely.
Yeah, I studied English and then I've been a musician pretty much since that time, like professionally. So it's like this was bound to happen. It's like you combine like an English lit degree with just like playing piano in a million bands like all the time. It was like, okay, finally, I've always wanted to do this, like try and consume like every single musical ever. Like And I just love cast support. Like I just drive around listening to that stuff and kind of like guess what the story is.
Do you have a favorite musical that you like so far? I know sometimes that's a loaded question out of it, like everything you've consumed so far.
Yeah, I've got a few soft spots. Next to Normal is awesome. I don't know if you're familiar with it. It's like the late 2000s.
I've heard of it, but I don't think I've seen it. But the name rings a bell.
The songs are awesome. It's very like mental illness forward, which
Mhm.
for the 2000s, I actually think it was slightly ahead of its time. And the songs are just like really pretty. And I don't know. Yeah, I think it's a great. It has kind of like a young adult capacity. I like
Cool.
coming of age stuff a lot. I like Be More Chill, which is like pretty new, and it's
Mhm.
hilarious. It's so funny, and I think the song's really clever. So yeah, I don't know. The contemporary thing makes me really happy. I just like hearing new stuff that's very like young.
New stuff. Yeah. We'll have to Mustard and I will have to check out both of those. And going back to something you said before, so you had got your English degree and then your songwriting. Um, how soon after your songwriting did the music start happening? Did you start making the music?
Yeah, maybe I didn't explain. Like, so I was playing in bands before I kind of started doing my thing, which I think is
Mhm.
probably pretty common. Um, and I'm grateful. Like, I look back on my early 20s and it was all like original music with friends. And a ton of it, like, obviously it's a slog. Like, you try to book shows, people don't email you back. You know, you try to make your
Mhm.
record, it takes forever. It's like all these things. But now I look back and you're like, oh my God, I was just like playing bands with my friends, which is still what I have the good fortune to do. But it was doing that and kind of getting my footing around all that stuff, and then I was like, I should try writing a song. Like I, I have a writerly brain. I'm sure I could do it. Like when I listen to music,
Mhm.
I think more about how it's written than anything else. So then I just started doing that, and then I had so many stockpiled that I was like, well, I better start a band and try to make albums. So never looked back.
No, that's awesome. And then, how soon did you start learning the piano?
Started playing piano when I was like 5. It was kind of the
Fine.
typical, like, your parents make you take it. And then
Hmm.
I discovered that I really, really liked it when I was probably like 11 or 12. Like, kind of that age
Hmm.
where, for me, it was American Idiot. It was literally like Green Day was like, what if pop
Oh, yep.
was just taken to like the highest level of
Hmm.
production, essentially? Like, just
Hmm.
like, made so well. And then I was like, the chords are so pretty, but also like I could just play them by ear because it's not rocket science. And I was like, I can
Yeah,
play this stuff that's so aesthetically pleasing and I can do it. So this is what I really like doing. I like playing guitar rock on piano. You know,
that's
my
awesome.
music
Yeah,
guys.
that's awesome. Yeah, American Idiot is such a influential album for me as well. I remember consuming it so much, so much. And then speaking of piano, you mentioned earlier Ben Folds, Mustard and I. We were listening to Maddie's Delivery Service, and we were getting like a really like Ben Folds vibe from it. Was that intentional with that album?
Well, so it wasn't intentional, but it can't be avoided, I think.
Mhm.
Some of it is just like the way he and I both play. Like you can tell he also just like really, really likes guitar rock a lot and then like plays like what other people probably
Yeah.
are like, dude, you play too hard. Cause like I get told that a lot because it's just like this passion,
Mhm.
like bombastic. And I mean, he's at least 100 million times better than I'll ever be at my instrument. But like sensibility wise, it's just that like, and then he's got that like theater flair, that can't be avoided. And I
Yeah.
think we both sing a little bit like 90s emo, like a
Mhm.
hard R and like kind of funny vowels sometimes. Like I
Mhm.
grew up. I mean, when I was like 18, I was like, wow, this guy Ben Folds is like incredible. This is like what I would write if I wrote music. This is what it would
Yeah.
be, you know.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it
No,
can't be
that
avoided. It's never been intentional, but it's like, yep, if you play piano, uh,
yeah.
it's sort of bound to happen.
Yeah, what was it? Ben Folds 5, I think that was just the self-titled album. That was another, Mustard and I don't make music, but it was really influential in like our taste and everything. And then what inspired the story of Maddie's Delivery Service and the concept of it?
I um So when I was like real there 27 2018 2017 2018, I was just writing songs so much because I wanted to get good at it. And there was like a
Mhm.
period where because I was doing it so constantly, I kind of like hit a nice stride with these like third person narratives, which is another thing
Mhm.
Ben Folds is a master of. I mean, he's got like dozens of them where it's like this character has a name, the song is from a narrator, right? I mean, Billy Joel does this. A lot of great, like Bruce Springsteen's
Yeah.
got a bunch of them. Um,
Mhm.
but I wrote like a ton in a row, and I was like, I really like doing this. I can almost project some of my problems onto a fictional character. I can imagine what they're going through. I'm a very social person, so also I can like imagine what my friends are going through and fictionalize it. And
Mhm.
then, I mean, I would not consider that album thematic. Like, it's not like one story, but I think it's just close
Yeah.
enough that most people would be like, this is more of a unified story than like most rock records, right? And the character
Mhm.
comes up in I think 3 of my songs. The character Sarah comes up
Mhm.
in 2 of my songs. So I kind of like being like, these are little treats. Like if you kind of know the albums, there's these people
Yeah.
that recur. I like to think that's pretty rare. Like most artists don't do that.
Yeah, no. Mustard and I can't really think of anything, and we love the storytelling of the album, of the third person narration that you mentioned about, and then you also released Cardio recently, or was that last year? Were you hoping to inspire humans to do cardio with that album? How did the name come up and inspiration come up for that album?
Oh, wow. Well, I mean, if I did any cardio, maybe I'd be in a position to encourage other people. I mean, like, it is probably obvious, but it's just mostly love songs and then some
Mhm.
mental illness songs. So I thought having so many songs that kind of have that like puppy love, obsession, crush,
Mhm.
relationship, breakup, that whole cycle is, people talk about
Mhm.
heartbreak and all of that. So I was like, okay, this is clever, but not too clever. It was just like the
Mhm.
appropriate thing to do.
Yeah.
Also, that album title wasn't taken, which
Oh.
like it popped into my head one time when we were making the record, and I was like, there's probably 20 albums on Wikipedia called Cardio that you'll have to like pick
Mhm.
through. So I was just shocked that like no other love songwriter has ever called their album Cardio. I thought that was absurd.
Yeah, that's really interesting because you could use cardio as like a metaphor for like, oh, I'm running towards you.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's so many possibilities. That is really surprising.
Well, and it's just like not even that deep of a metaphor. It's just like pop music.
Yeah,
So it's like the heart. I was like, this is,
yeah.
Um, I was gonna say something else, but I forgot. But yeah, I thought that title is just like appropriate, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, and then you released instrumentals for that and Maddie's as well. Right?
Hmm. Yeah, I work with a label a little bit. They're somewhere on the East Coast, and just the nicest people. And one of those guys was like, if it's not hard for you to get your own masters without the vocal, it might be
Hmm.
worth doing and see if someone is ever interested in like throwing it in a movie or something like that. I didn't really assume that my fans and friends would sit around listening to the instrumentals.
Hmm.
Maybe they do though. I mean, it could be nice like homework playlist or something. But
Yeah.
he was like,
Yeah,
you
no,
just put them out, and maybe someone will be doing like a TV thing, and they'll just be like, "This is kind of cool."
yeah. No, I think it's nice because it like the you can still kind of get a sense of the story from the instrumentals of like what you're going with. Like a lot, Mustard and I, we listen to like a lot of like independent hip hop, and usually like a year or a couple months later on from the album release, they release like the instrumental version of just the beats, which is cool. And I think that's a cool like extra addition to the package of the album itself.
Yeah, or I almost always do this. Like you figure out if it's like sample based, and you listen to the song they sampled if you didn't know it, and then you realize the mood that the rapper and or producer was like, this is what made me feel like it synced with something I wrote. I love
Mhm.
that. Like you're like, wow, this random 70s record is like, like an album cut, and you would never have
Mhm.
realized that it was the sample until you Googled it or whatever.
Yeah,
I like that.
I think was it your I think it was your album I was listening to. Did you sample BoJack?
Uh, that's something I would do. Do you remember like
Or
or anything?
I may be thinking of somebody else, but somebody sampled BoJack. I thought it was you. But Mustard and I could be wrong.
Well, I've watched that entire series like at least twice. We could have a whole conversation just about that, you know.
It is a phenomenal show. Something I have to revisit again. But backtracking again, we're going back to. I'm going to go back to Ben Folds quickly. I don't know if you're a big Community fan at all or a fan of Community, but do you think Ben Folds was the ass crack bandit on the episode that he was on?
I never thought about that before. I don't think I watched Community to the end. You remember how like Dan Harmon left like to make
Mm-hmm.
I wonder how many seasons was Community? I honestly don't know.
6 seasons.
I feel like I watched the first 4, and I have no memory of like Ben Folds doing a thing in Community, which is like something I would definitely remember.
I think he came in. Yeah, I think he came in season 5 or 6. It was I think it was season 5 because it was on Yahoo for some reason of all places, and the production was kind of like minimized. It was like all the episodes were a lot darker than usual, but they had this whole one episode that he guest starred in where there was a student putting quarters down the ass crack of the students, and it was like a whole like mystery crime inspired episode. It was hysterical. But yeah, he's in that episode. I had just thought about that while we were talking about Ben Folds.
Well, I was literally going to be like, I should to figure out like Google Community ass crack, but I'm not going to Google that.
Yeah,
I think Community
I think
Folds is a much better search.
yeah,
Better.
I would go with that. And then another release of yours was, apologize if I'm getting the name wrong. This is the problem, or is it this?
This
Is that
time
the
yeah.
that one? That's it. That's what we meant.
Yeah, which to me also was like appropriate and not too clever. It was just like, this makes sense, you know.
Could you share more about that release too?
Yeah, I'm really happy to. I mean, that collection of songs, unlike Cardio and Maddie's Delivery Service, was drawn from kind of a longer era of songwriting. Like one or two of them, I think I wrote in like 2018, and I was doing some of the final touches like January 2021, which for me is a long spread. The reason it took so long was, one, I was making 2 other records, playing in a million bands, and then the literal coronavirus happened, obviously. So
yeah,
that record was made January 2021. I am amazed I could like get out of bed and go make it. I think it's remarkable that the album like got made, frankly. But I mean, the title I think kind of speaks for itself. It's supposed to be a little bit funny, but it's like more intimate in a musical way because it's only piano, strings, and vocal. I personally also feel like the songwriting is more confessional than my previous confessional work. I think I just got in the trenches with like mental illness stuff, and I was like, it's fine to be open about this. It's healthy to be open about this stuff.
Absolutely.
There's a fine place for it in the arts, you know? So to me, that was the personal part of it. And I'm hoping it resonated with people. I think it did.
Absolutely. You know, mental illness is something that we should all be talking about. You know, Mustard and I both believe in you know, taking mental health days, you know, if possible, or just decompressing and shutting down, not being so used to the serotonin on your phones every time, and all that. But no, hopefully, you know, it resonated with us while we were listening to it. And it's such an important conversation, because those conversations, you don't know. Well, obviously, we don't know what's going on all the time with everybody, despite social media and all that stuff. So, you know, you as a musician talking about it definitely, you know, is great and can build conversations and everything.
I'm glad that resonated with both you and Mustard.
Yeah.
That means a lot.
Yes, it did.
So that record was also preceded, the same session, there was 4 singles that were not on that album. So hopefully, I don't like with Spotify, like singles get buried, which like really irritates me. So like Maddie's Delivery Service is like singles and EPs. So if you go to My Music, you would have to already be looking for it, which like is fine. But I mean, a song is a lot of work. So when a song just like disappears, it's like whatever. Anyway,
Yeah.
4 singles before This Time It's Personal that I'm also very proud of. And so when I talk about those sessions and that kind of place that I was in, those songs are meant to be a big part of that as well. I want to give them some credit where they're due as well.
Yeah, that's great, and we hope whoever is watching this, go ahead and find Zaq Baker on Spotify and hit view all. Mustard and I find that to be the easiest, and in terms of view and everything.
When you think they do that, only because like I mean, since like the 1960s, like the single has kind of been the thing most people look for anyway. I'm a huge album guy, but it's like make the singles easy to.
Yeah,
seems very obvious. Yeah, anyway, that's a whole other.
Yeah,
it's a whole other thing.
Yeah, yeah. The UI of Spotify could probably use an update. So we've been talking about your music, and on Instagram you had recently just shared that you had just finished a novel. Would you want to share what that process was like and more about the novel?
Yeah, I would be very happy to. So yeah, as you say, I literally just announced that yesterday. So the actual, I mean the book, like that's something I've wanted to do since I was a little kid, and I think a lot of people that are writerly try starting one and then they kind of stop, which like I had also done 3 or 4 times. And December 2021. I was like, I'm actually just going to do it. There was that period around Christmas where I was like, it's social. You see people every day, but like life is really slow. And I just picked a week. And it's like this week, I'm going to think about like themes I want to get across. I'm going to think about symbols that I think are interesting to do in like a literary way. Not shockingly, the book it's not about music, but most of the characters are musicians, and that's the world that they live in. So I was kind of thinking about like rock lore, like things that you and I and Mustard all kind of know just from like stories of what it means to live in that world, and then also like obviously my own stories and the many people I played with. But anyway, I spent like a whole week just doing what I guess they call composting, which is like literally putting seeds in the dirt and being like, what am I maybe gonna make this thing? It now feels very old. That was all the kind of incipient ideas that was like, maybe a character is named this, and maybe these are symbols associated with them, and these are their problems, and these are like unanswered questions that this book is going to answer. So you had asked about process. So I worked on it really obsessively from that week until about a year ago. So March 2022. And that is, I hit a point where, and I hate to even admit it, but I just got miserable because I was so like I was working really hard, but I don't think the workflow was very good. I wasn't doing very much by hand. It was all in a document, which because I'm such a ruthless editor, the problem that I think happened is I would be writing the story, but I was so fixated on making all the prose really good that it was like hard to get very far. And I showed a draft to the person who urged me to write it originally, because he was like, "I'm tired of you not writing a book. You should just do it." But I showed him the passage, and he was like, "It sounds like you're working against yourself here. Like you need to kind of, And he didn't know how I was going to do that, but that's how he felt from the prose. So I took a break in March. I wrote 2 short pieces that I'm very proud to say got published. I also just did an absolute ton of reading. I mean, I was doing that anyway, but that's when I really picked up the pace on just like absorbing fiction, absorbing a lot of short pieces, which I love about the internet because there's so many good journals now that'll publish independent writers. Short stories. I love creative nonfiction, like someone that's had a real problem and they write about it in the first person can be a beautiful thing. So I did that. I really just like kind of put it down until August, and then I was literally laying in bed and a new opening line just hit me, and I started writing of all things like in the notepad on my phone, which I never thought I'd be that person, but I was literally like walking around like in a park, like this is what like the protagonist is gonna say. And Then I got home from where I was, and I wrote the book by hand in August,
Oh, that's amazing.
which sounds like a kind of manic thing to do, which admittedly it sort of was, but it
Mhm.
really freed up that like edit as you go problem, because I would do a fair amount of like, no, I don't want to say that, or like, here's kind of a footnote.
Yeah, yeah.
But in general, I think it's also just more emotional writing by hand. But in like, the reason was because it was like, I'm not writing like the formal printed book. It's
Yeah.
I'm making the art piece, and I'll have to wrangle it as time goes on. So that was August, September. I thought it was done in October, and of course, like, I had to revisit it many times and go through the entire thing again. And I think now it's like truly done.
No, that's amazing. And then you mentioned you just had some published pieces published. Congrats on that. Is this the novel? And I'm sure it's still early in the process. Is this one novel going to be something that you like self-publish, or are you hoping to send to like an agent or find an agent and go down that route?
I have been reaching out to agents since October. I have a spreadsheet that has like several hundred people. It's like, because again, I mean, the internet, like, there's just a list that's like, it's called like 665 agents. And it's
Oh,
a
okay.
list of them with many defunct websites, but many that are good. And these people want to be found, which is nice. So they have a bio that's
Mhm.
like, please email me if you're a debut novelist, and they have their genres and their wish lists out there. So it's also
Oh,
easy to
nice.
rule out what you're not. Like, some of them are like, I only work with these certain genres, and it's like, great, best of luck to you, you know? So
Yeah.
I've been doing that. It is a long mountain that is difficult to climb, and I think most people do not expect to be successful. And I think that is super fair by the numbers.
Yeah.
It's just a tough game. Um, and then I've reached out to a ton of independent publishers, because lately I've just been reading more books that are like in that world, where someone
Mhm.
took a chance on someone else, and it's not like a giant whatever, like these people call those people mainstream public,
Mhm.
and I'm not even sure where their
Oh, okay.
is. But point being, it's like, I'm a publisher, you can just email me and send me your manuscript, and if it sucks, I probably just won't email you back.
Mhm.
So I've been doing that. Self-publishing, I will not knock it. I think people that do it, I think that's awesome. However, I just get nervous that I'm going to like mess up the formatting and print like
Mhm.
500 books that are like screwed up in the margins because I did it and I'm an idiot.
Yeah.
B, I have only a few stringent ethical preclusions, but Amazon is one of them. And
Mhm.
their chokehold on self-publishing specifically cannot be overstated. Like, no matter who you do it through, whether it's
Mhm.
an ebook or physical, from everything I've read online, it's like almost impossible to avoid having the vast majority of those sales go through Amazon, or else
Oh,
people
okay.
just won't read it. And
Mhm.
then why did you do the whole thing if no one's reading your book? So
Yeah.
if that was my only choice, then I think I would do it. I mean, Spotify's evil too, and here we are saying people should
Yeah.
listen to
Yeah.
Spotify like 8 hours a day. But those are the reasons I haven't seriously thought about self-publishing. Like I say, I
Mhm.
totally would. The Amazon thing freaks me out. I don't like it.
Yeah. No, completely understand. Mustard and I, we can go on our tangent about Spotify because it's great, it's convenient, but we're more Bandcamp people. Like if you have stuff on Bandcamp, we much rather listening to it there, or support you there. Like we wish Bandcamp Friday was like every Friday, or just you got the cut of the proceeds of what you should, just in general, anyways. But I know they just started a union, which is pretty cool, and hopefully something will happen similarly at Spotify.
I didn't know about the union. That is wonderful news. I'm gonna have to look that up after the talk.
Yeah, I think it's called Bandcamp United everywhere. I think they have like an Instagram page now, and I think they have a website as well. But yeah, they just started something. But yeah, completely get you there with the ethics and everything. But no, we wish you the best of luck with the book, and we're excited to see it come out in the future.
Yeah, it's funny because it's like this work of obsession and rework for such a long time, and it's so private. And then I think most people in the industry would be like, "Great, your journey is about to start," and that, I mean, that's real, you know. But it's like,
Yeah.
now I think at the outset, many people say it's like a 2-year thing when the actual manuscript is like all the way done until you might actually see it in a bookstore. But I'm optimistic. I mean, as a person, I have all kinds of whatever. I make a point of being optimistic, I think is what I'm trying to do.
Yeah.
It's like I did it anyway. What other choice do
Yeah.
I have than to just like work as hard as possible to try and get it out there? And
That's true.
cross my fingers, people read their emails.
Yeah. Yeah. Mustard and I, we are in our email. We have our email up all the time. So if we respond quickly, that's why, because we always have it up, almost to a fault. Like we're always checking the email. But no. And we hope that they do read your emails, when you're sending it and pitching it out.
I think part of it too is like the people you're emailing, they have dozens of manuscripts in their email already. So to be fair, most of them are like, at our best, it'll be about a 6-month response time because it's listening to a song does not take as long as to read.
Yeah, that's true.
That's what's also allowed me to be optimistic. That's like almost a privilege of the time scale because it's like if I started in October, I can be a little bit demoralized now, but I maybe don't even know what those people think yet, which is maybe there's some freedom in that. I'm not really sure.
Yeah. Well, when it is out, let Mustard and I know, because we've been thinking about, we haven't done it yet, but we've been thinking about potentially like adding music book reviews to Music Shelf, or making like a sub tab something on there, but doing book reviews on Music Shelf at some point is something we've been toying with. But like you said, reading a book takes a lot longer than listening to a song. But when it is out, though, do feel free to reach back out to us, and then maybe we could get a review going for that, because we hope to expand to that at some point.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I mean, that would be awesome. That would be a dream. So God knows when it'll actually be out.
Yeah.
I would love that.
Yeah, when it is out, just let us know. It will be from the perspective of a mustard bottle, so you have that there. But yeah, no, definitely do reach out to us when it is out, and we'll do our best on getting a review out for you. So we've talked about your novel, we've talked about your music. Where would you recommend that those watching this now go and check out your music?
Yeah, well, like you and I talked about, it's like a tough, it's a bit of a battle because I would just say go to the major streaming services. That's where all my stuff exists. And I have a lot of music. That very fact is something I'm proud of, just not because of me, but because it's a reflection of just like work ethic. It's like, look at this, I made all this stuff. So Solar Baby came out in January, and I have 2 other albums and 2 other EPs, something like that, and a bunch of singles. So those are all Spotify, Apple Music, whatever. And I do have a website, which is kind of nice because it's got everything in one place. So
oh, cool. Okay.
ZaqBaker.com is probably a good place for a person to go. And that's got gigs and stuff too. So if someone was local, or if I do end up going like on the road more, then that's nice as well.
Sweet. And we will have that in the description below. God, we hate that phrase so much, but it will be in the description below, with everything that we just talked about in there. Your Spotify, Apple Music, and your website. And it's so convenient when artists have websites with everything being right there. Makes it a lot easier and nicer. But yeah, so that's awesome.
Yeah, not to be like the Squarespace guy, but I was intimidated. It's another intimidation thing where for forever it was like, oh, you don't have a website? Like you should, why don't you have a website? And I was like, oh, it's going to be a whole thing. I'm going to be bad at it. I don't know how to do it. It took me like an afternoon. And I'm like a total like space cadet. Like I'm the type of person where it would take a long time, and it was like, I just kind of set aside a few hours and like I got the domain and whatever. So anyone that feels scared about that, if I can do it, you can do it.
So, you can do it. Whoever's watching this, if you're contemplating, just go ahead and do it.
Go make that website. Give Squarespace all your money. What's stopping you? Nothing.
Yes. Squarespace if you want to sponsor us in the future, or Zach,
Tag me.
please go ahead.
Tag him. Yeah.
Please go ahead. Do you have any last words before we go? Any last plugs or anything like that?
Well, I was going to thank you for your mission because I've looked at your website. I've also like this stuff you've reviewed, I've listened to, and it's just like a
Awesome.
great collection of artists. But also, I just love the like about where it's like our job is to uplift artists. Like that's what we are actually doing, as opposed to anything that's like we only take like these certain submissions because we're like negative and insecure and judgmental. And I'm not saying there's a lot of people like that, but it's nice when someone's job is like, I want to go uplift other artists and share their music with the world. Because I was like, okay, I love that. And then Wicked Bears was the top thing on there. And I listened to their album and I was like, oh my God, like everything on this Mustard website is good. I'm just going to have to start listening to all of it.
That means that means so much. Thank you.
Well, I think it's important. I think I'm fortunate to be part of a community where so many different artists uplift one another. Because sometimes it's like if we don't, it's hard to say who will, and the words can't really express the value of that. So I appreciate what you do so much. It's really awesome.
Absolutely. And that's why we have the artist section on the website. So those watching this now, if they go to Music Shelf and Mustard and click on your photo, it brought you to this. And we try to update that. I try to update that after every interview. So we'll publish something. Your photo with the link to the interview goes up. But that means a lot. And that Wicked Bears album is fantastic. It's one of our favorites.
And whatever I think they have an EP other than that one, but I liked it so much I just went through all of it. It's just like so good. I love it.
Yeah,
you have a good sense of humor too. I love when a band is really good but doesn't take themselves seriously in storytelling all the time. And it's like he's got like a goofy, like almost dystopian sense of humor, and it's like it makes me very happy.
Yeah, same here. The humor of the album is what caught Mustard and I first, because we're big on comedy, so we're like, oh yeah, this is great. We're like exactly how you just described it is great. But no, we thank you so much for the kind words for music about Music Shelf. It is our goal to uplift artists as much as possible. We don't discriminate. We listen to everything, or we try to listen to everything, as much as possible. The shade to Submit Hub, I believe, is what you were getting at. We want to be the opposite of that. So
yeah, that's funny actually, because I didn't have them in mind. But yes, there are many. Is curator the right word?
Where that's how it is on the website.
There's like curator. A feedback section, and there's so many horror stories of like the most cruel or dismissive or condescending. It's okay. I washed my hands of that. I'm lucky to not even sort of be in that like department of anything. But yeah. People being uplifted is the main thing, so I appreciate that you do that. And shout out Wicked Bears, I guess, because now I can't stop talking about how much I like them.
Of course, yes. And for those of you, after you're done watching this interview and listening to Zaq Baker, go listen to Underwater by Wicked Bears, the new album. Fantastic. But yeah, we appreciate your kind words so much, and for being here. And we hope you have a great rest of your night.
Awesome. Okay, and then just for video logistics, should I just do nothing until it's done, like exporting or whatever? I don't want to do the wrong thing.
Yeah, so I'm going to hit stop now, and then once it shows that it's not recording, I'll let you know when it says fully uploaded. And then we'll